Nina lowered her eyes, lips pressed together, her heart warring with itself. Nina, time is of the essence, Harvey Goldman purred, his voice a low murmur in her ear. He leaned in, a predatory smile playing on his lips. Nina's face, already pale, drained of what little color remained. Images of two people flashed through her mind. She bit her lip. "Mr. Goldman," she finally said, "I agree. That's my girl." "Good things come to those who cooperate," he chuckled, his hand reaching up to caress her cheek. Nina fought down the rising nausea, forcing herself to remain still. Just as his lips were about to meet hers, a knock sounded at the office door. "Mr. Goldman, Mr. Hayes is here." Harvey froze, releasing Nina and hurrying to the door. He opened it with a fawning smile. "Mr. Hayes." Ethan Hayes strode past him into the office. He paused when he saw Nina, a slight frown creasing his brow. "A guest?" Casting 4 legends. Ms. Tanner is here for an audition." "Here?" Harvey couldn't read Ethan's expression, nor could he fathom the reason for this unexpected visit. He was completely flustered. "Ms. Tanner had some questions about the script, so she came to me for clarification." "So, Ms. Tanner has the part already?" Ethan asked, crossing his legs and fixing Harvey with a steady gaze. A bead of sweat trickled down Harvey's forehead. "I'm personally selecting the cast 4 legends," Ethan said, his eyes narrowing slightly. He stood and headed for the door. Harvey stared after him, still processing the information. He glanced at Nina, whose face was now whiter than before. Could they? A seed of suspicion took root in his mind. At the elevators, Ethan stood with one hand in his pocket, his gaze fixed on some distant point. His assistant, Liam, stood behind him. The elevator doors opened with a ding. Ethan stepped inside, followed by Liam. As the doors closed, Ethan spoke. "Is that actress with the company?" Liam stammered, "Mr. Hayes, I'll need to verify that." "No need. If she's with us, let her go. If not, inform the industry. Hayes Entertainment doesn't need actresses like that." He stepped out of the elevator, leaving Liam scrambling to catch up and open his office door. Ethan sat down and picked up a file, then looked up sharply. "Something on your mind, Liam?" "No, sir. I'll take care of it immediately." News quickly reached Harvey. He promptly ejected Nina from the building. "Mr. Goldman, you promised," she pleaded. He scoffed, "I've changed my mind. Please, help me." "Help you?" "Helping you means losing my job." "Get out of here," he snarled. Nina stood numbly outside the Hayes Entertainment building, staring into the distance. 5 years ago, desperate to pay for her mother's medical bills, she had abandoned Ethan on their wedding day, running off with another man. But before she could give herself to him, she collapsed, only to discover later that she was pregnant with Ethan's child. The man offered her money to have an abortion, but refused to marry her. She left him, keeping her child. She had swallowed her pride and begged relatives for money, some offering pity, others disdain. It wasn't enough. Pregnant, she took odd jobs, scraping by until she found work as a maternity model. After her son, Alex, was born, she continued modeling, eventually transitioning into acting. Her sharp memory for scripts allowed her to rise from extra and stunt double to a small degree of recognition. Nina walked home, took a deep breath, and opened the door. "Mommy!" A small boy's voice called out. She hugged him and walked to the kitchen, where her friend, Sarah, was busy cooking. "Thanks, Sarah. Don't mention it." "Alex is my godson," Sarah replied, stirring a pan. "How'd the audition go, superstar?" Nina's face fell. "What happened?" Sarah asked. "Let's eat first." After dinner, after Alex was asleep, Nina sat on the living room sofa. "I saw Ethan," she said quietly. "What?" Sarah gasped. "He's the CEO of Hayes Entertainment." "You saw him?" Sarah asked, recovering from her shock. Nina recounted the events in Harvey's office. Harvey's a scumbag. Sarah exploded when she heard about the attempted coercion. Sarah, I think my acting career is over. So what? I'll take care of you and Alex, Sarah said, putting her arm around Nina. Nina was silent for a moment. No. I worked hard for this. I won't let him take it away. Ethan's not the same struggling artist he used to be. How did he become the CEO of Hayes Entertainment? His father is Mayor Howard. What? Sarah exclaimed. His parents divorced when he was young. He lived with his mother. So, after his mother passed, Mayor Howard took him in? Nina shook her head. When they were dating, Ethan rarely mentioned his father. She knew very little. Curling up on the sofa, Nina hugged her knees. Sarah, am I a terrible person? Sarah hesitated. If she had been in Nina's position, she might have made the same choice. Her mother or her lover. Nina, if you had told him, Sarah began, but Nina interrupted. If I had told him, I would have lost not only my mom, but him too. Why? When my mom was first hospitalized, he gave me all his savings. Later, for the surgery, we needed a lot more money. He was going to sell his kidney. The memory sent shivers down her spine. If she hadn't stopped him, Ethan would have lost a kidney. She had cried and hit him, and he had just held her tight. Nina, he had whispered, your mom gave me a second chance at life. But you can't do this. We'll find another way, she had sobbed, beating against his chest. Nina, I'm useless, he had said, his face filled with self-reproach. Later, Nina had secretly borrowed money from loan sharks, using it for her mother's surgery. Her mother hadn't recovered well. One day, she had insisted they get married, wanting to see her grandchild. They had agreed, but a week before the wedding, the loan sharks had come, demanding repayment. Nina had no money, and they, seeing her beauty, had offered her to another man. Nina, Ethan isn't heartless, Sarah said gently. I admire you. You faced those thugs alone for Alex. I would have been terrified. Alex is the only connection I have left with him. Are you going to tell him about Alex? No. If I can help it, he'll never know. The next day, Nina's agent, Jenny, called. Nina, bad news. Mr. Wong fired you. I know. Nina hung up the phone and waved to Alex at the kindergarten gate. Be good for your teacher. Okay, Mommy. Nina stood outside Hayes Entertainment. She hadn't expected Ethan to blacklist her completely. As a security guard eyed her for the nth time, Ethan emerged from the building. Seeing him, her carefully constructed courage crumbled. He walked past her without a glance, Liam trailing behind him. Liam at least gave her a look. A car pulled up. The driver opened the door, and as Ethan bent to enter, Nina rushed forward, grabbing his arm. Ethan straightened, his gaze cold as it swept over her hand on his sleeve. Nina quickly let go, looking down. Mr. Hayes, please, don't blacklist me. Ms. Tanner, you were openly propositioning a producer in his office. Do you think an actress with such low morals deserves to work in this industry? Ethan's voice was calm, but his presence radiated a chilling intensity. Nina bit her lip. Mr. Hayes, you misunderstood. He cut her off impatiently. Misunderstood? Ms. Tanner, don't tell me those marks on your neck are self-inflicted. He slid into the car. Nina stood frozen, watching the car disappear. Tears streamed down her face. Inside the car, Liam glanced at Nina's reflection in the rearview mirror. That Ms. Tanner has a 4 or 5-year-old child. Is she divorced? Why else would she be involved with someone like Goldman, he mused aloud. Ethan stiffened, raising an eyebrow. How do you know that? I did some background research yesterday, Mr. Hayes. Liam was curious about the connection between his boss and this woman. And what did you find? Ethan asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. Just that she has a son and lives with a woman named Sarah in a low-income neighborhood. Is that all? Liam's eyes darted around nervously. Yes, sir. Report to HR tomorrow. Sir? Liam's face paled. To process your resignation. Liam's expression turned to one of utter despair. Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry. Ethan turned to the window, his face a mask of thunder. Liam stole another glance at his boss. He had stumbled upon a major revelation: his boss and Ms. Tanner were legally married. Could that child be? He stopped that thought in its tracks. Ethan's cold voice broke through his musings. Have that child's complete file on my desk tomorrow. Liam stared. Yes, sir. Over the next few days, Nina was constantly rejected. 5 years ago played out all over again. She was back to square one, jobless. Exhausted, she returned home, too weary to speak. She started dinner. Half an hour later, Sarah arrived with Alex. That night, after Alex was asleep, the two women sat on the sofa. Nina, have you considered why Ethan is doing this? Sarah asked. Nina's expression hardened. He probably both loves and hates you. She remained silent. If you don't want to give up, fight for it. Maybe things aren't as complicated as you think, Sarah suggested. Sarah, I just want to earn money. Enough to raise Alex. The memory of being penniless was a constant ache. In Ethan's office, Liam entered. Mr. Hayes, I've got the information. Ethan put down his pen. Report. Nina Tanner, female, 30 years old. Ethan frowned. Get to the point. Her son is Alex Tanner, 4.5, attends Sunnyside Kindergarten. 4.5? Yes. Neighbors and relatives confirm she was pregnant 5 years ago. I also confirmed with the doctor who delivered the baby. And the father? Unknown. Unknown? Ethan found that intriguing. Should we run a DNA test, Mr. Hayes? Ethan's gaze turned icy. Against whom? Liam faltered. It wasn't his boss's child? Get out, Ethan said curtly. Liam placed the file on the desk and retreated. Ethan picked up a photo of a small boy who looked remarkably like Nina. He ran his fingers over the image, his breathing growing heavier. Could this be his child? The last time he and Nina were together was the day before their wedding. They weren't supposed to see each other, but she had been clingy, and they had made love. They hadn't used protection, since they were to be married the next day. But then she had left him. If she had conceived that day, the child would have been born prematurely, at 7 months. It couldn't be his. Ethan's eyes darkened. Nina stayed home, too afraid to face Ethan again. Love or hate, their paths could never cross again. Her phone rang. Ms. Tanner, her son's teacher, said, Alex isn't here today. Nina froze. My friend dropped him off. He's not here. 30 minutes later, Nina arrived at the kindergarten to find Sarah getting out of a taxi. Nina, I dropped Alex off. Where is he? Sarah's voice was frantic. Nina paled. Alex was her life. Let's go inside and ask the teacher, Nina said. They rushed to the office. Ms. Young, what happened? Nina asked. He wasn't here at roll call. None of the other children saw him, Ms. Young replied. I saw him go inside, Sarah insisted. Let's check the security footage. They watched as a man carried Alex away. Nina recognized him. Liam, Ethan's assistant. Why would he take Alex? Did Ethan know? She shook her head. Impossible. Alex looked just like her, and he was premature. The doctor was her mother's close friend and would never reveal the secret. Ethan couldn't have found out. Outside the kindergarten, Sarah hesitated. Nina, do you know that man? Yes. He works for Ethan. Does he know about Alex? Sarah's voice rose slightly. Nina shook her head. What are you going to do? Are you going to see Ethan? Yes. Nina hailed a cab. Her heart pounded with anxiety. In Ethan's office, he and Alex sat facing each other. Liam stood by, studying the boy. He was the spitting image of Nina. Why had Mr. Hayes brought the child here? No, legally, Nina was still his wife. Was she giving him? Liam didn't dare finish the thought. Mister, where's my mommy? Alex asked, looking up at Ethan. Ethan glanced at Liam. I showed him Ms. Tanner's picture and told him I'd take him to his mommy, Liam explained. Ethan frowned. The child's lack of stranger danger was alarming. Take him downstairs. Mister, where's my mommy? Alex asked again, starting to get scared. Liam picked him up and looked at Ethan, who was clearly in a foul mood. Without answering, Liam carried Alex out. An hour later, Liam received a call from reception. Mr. Hayes, Ms. Tanner is here. Send her in. Nina stood before Ethan's desk, hesitant. Mr. Hayes, please return my son. Ethan smirked. Your son? Yes. Your assistant brought him here. She was direct. She just wanted to leave, terrified he'd discover the truth. You want your son back? Ethan's gaze was complex, his face darkening. Of course. He stood, walked around the desk, and loomed over her. Ms. Tanner, you're in good shape. Nina's breath hitched. At 7 p.m., Nina, in a black mermaid gown, accompanied Ethan to a private dining room. Mr. Hayes, long time no see. A middle-aged man approached, extending his hand. Mr. Quinn. Ethan shook his hand politely. Mr. Quinn introduced the two people behind him. This is my secretary, Ms. Yang, and my assistant, Mr. Zhou. Mr. Hayes, they chorused. Ethan nodded and gestured to Nina. Nina Tanner, a new artist with the company. Mr. Quinn's gaze lingered on Nina's décolletage. Mr. Quinn, it's a pleasure, Nina said politely. The pleasure's all mine, Ms. Tanner. Please, sit. Leaning in close, Ethan murmured in Nina's ear, Mr. Quinn is the investor for Reminiscence. Be nice to him. He might just give you the lead role. Nina stiffened. Hearing him call her Nina took her back 5 years. Mr. Quinn, Nina's quite the drinker, Ethan added, his voice casual. Excellent. Ms. Tanner, to us. Mr. Quinn beamed, raising his glass. Ethan leaned back, a faint smile on his lips. Nina clinked glasses with Mr. Quinn and drained hers in one gulp. Impressive. They continued drinking. Midway through, Ethan excused himself. Mr. Quinn's secretary and assistant exchanged a glance and also left. Bitterness welled up inside Nina. Ethan's words echoed in her ears, you want your son? Entertain Mr. Quinn. She hadn't dreamed he would actually pimp her out. The Ethan who had once adored her was gone. Her heart twisted painfully. Ms. Tanner, let's go to a hotel for a more intimate discussion, Mr. Quinn slurred, putting his arm around her waist and pulling her up. Mr. Quinn, Mr. Hayes hasn't returned yet, she protested, forcing a smile. Silly girl, Mr. Hayes gave you to me. He won't interrupt our fun. Mr. Quinn swayed as he stood, pulling Nina with him. Mr. Quinn, please. Nina, after tonight, the lead role is yours. Ignoring her struggles, he led her out of the room. In the corridor, they bumped into Ethan, who was smoking. Mr. Hayes, Mr. Quinn said, I'm taking Nina with me. Certainly. Nina stared at Ethan, disbelief warring with the rising panic. He was actually letting her. What are you waiting for? Go with Mr. Quinn. Take good care of him, Ethan said, his voice flat. Nina searched his face for any sign of a joke, but his expression was serious. Her heart sank. She plastered on a dazzling smile. Of course, Mr. Hayes. I'll take excellent care of Mr. Quinn. She steered Mr. Quinn toward the elevators. Ethan flinched. That smile cut him like a knife. He watched the elevator doors close, then pulled out his phone. Grand Hotel, room 1808. Solicitation of prostitution. 30 minutes later, police officers emerged from the hotel, escorting Mr. Quinn and Nina. A black car waited nearby. Mr. Hayes? Liam asked from the driver's seat. Get Nina out, Ethan said, sinking back against the seat and closing his eyes. Liam glanced at his boss in the rearview mirror and sighed, pulling away from the curb. The next morning, Sarah knocked on Nina's bedroom door. Nina, are you awake? Is Alex back? Nina lay in bed, her eyes swollen. Hearing no response, Sarah opened the door. She gasped at Nina's tear-stained face. Nina, what happened? Sarah, Nina burst into tears. Sarah sat beside her, offering tissues. Nina, don't cry. Whatever happened, you have to be strong. You have Alex. It's karma, it's all karma, Nina sobbed, her heart tearing apart. Stop crying, your eyes are swollen shut. Sarah comforted her. Ethan, he made me sleep with a man. What? Sarah was stunned. Luckily, the police raided the hotel, otherwise, Nina choked out. That bastard. I'm going to confront him. Sarah jumped up. No, Sarah, don't. I owe him. I owe him, Nina grabbed her hand. 6 months later, Nina's career had taken off. She sat in a makeup chair, the artist touching up her makeup. Nina, your skin is flawless. Barely need any makeup at all. Nina smiled. Her phone rang. Her assistant glanced at it and paused. Nina, it's Mr. Hayes. Seeing Nina make no move to answer, the assistant answered it. Mr. Hayes, hello. Let Nina take the call. Nina, the assistant offered the phone. Nina hesitated, then took it. Mr. Hayes, who am I entertaining tonight? For the past 6 months, whenever Ethan called, it meant accompanying someone, usually for drinks or cards, but never anything like that night with Mr. Quinn. Hayes Manor, Ethan said coldly, then hung up. Nina froze. Wasn't that his marital home with his fiancée? That evening, Nina drove to the address. Thanks to Ethan, she had earned enough money to buy a new car and a better apartment. She knocked on the door and waited. Ethan opened it, wearing a robe, his expression impassive. Mr. Hayes, I'm here. Who am I with tonight? She asked, remaining outside. Come in. I'll wait out here. She remembered the last time she was here. Ethan's ulcer had flared up, and Liam had called her to bring his medication. She had barely stepped inside when his fiancée arrived and slapped her. Ethan had said nothing, just sent her away. Don't make me say it again. His gaze was intense, almost overwhelming. This Ethan was so different from the loving man she once knew. She suddenly turned and ran for the elevators. He caught her arm, spun her around, and threw her inside. Nina landed hard, scrambling back. Ethan, what do you want? He crouched down, gripping her chin. Nina Tanner, is playing games with me that amusing? Tears welled up in her eyes. She shook her head. Ethan released her, his eyes fixed on her stomach. He ran his hand over it, a chilling smile spreading across his face. You've carried a child here? What are you doing? Nina whispered, her face pale. Whose was it? His cold breath fanned her cheek. Nina froze. Speak. She turned her head away. It wasn't yours. Ethan laughed coldly. Very well, Nina Tanner. You still won't tell the truth. It seems I've been too lenient. He leaned down, his lips crashing against hers, hard and punishing, as if he wanted to crush her lying mouth. He realized she was barely breathing and muttered, "Idiot, can't even breathe properly." A week earlier, Ethan had returned from a business trip. As soon as he landed, he received a call from Alex. "Mister, can you pick me up?" He had paused, his lips pressed together in a thin line. Alex's voice became urgent. "Mister, Mommy's on a business trip, and Auntie Sarah is sick." A strange tightness gripped Ethan's chest. He had felt an inexplicable connection to Alex since their first meeting. He finally spoke. "Okay." "Yay!" Alex cheered. Ethan brought Alex back to his apartment, cooked him dinner, helped him with his homework, and played with him. For a fleeting moment, he imagined a family of 3. The thought of Nina filled him with rage. His smartwatch buzzed. It was Sarah. "Alex, honey, where are you?" "Auntie Sarah, I'm at Mr. Ethan's." "Who?" "Mr. Ethan." "Ethan Hayes?" "No, you can't stay there. I'll come get you." "Sarah, Alex is fine with me." "You don't need to come," Ethan interrupted. "No, Alex has to come home." "Mr. Hayes, where are you?" "I'll pick him up." Ethan hung up, ignoring her. But Sarah had called the police, which raised his suspicions. As Sarah took Alex away, he had pulled a few strands of the boy's hair. The next day, Liam had delivered the DNA report. Ethan's breath had caught in his throat. Only Nina would dare play him like this. He had Liam investigate everything about Nina from 5 years ago. As the truth unfolded, he was stunned. The loan sharks had been his father's men. His father, who only had him as an heir, had tried to bring him back into the fold, but Ethan had refused. Now, Nina had reappeared, and his father had presented him with a fiancée. "Ethan, let me go," Nina whispered, tears in her eyes. "I let you go, and who will let me go?" he murmured. "Ethan." His dark eyes searched her face. He traced his fingers over her lips, down her neck. He lowered his head and kissed her, a deep, possessive kiss. Nina struggled briefly, then closed her eyes, the words escaping her lips, "Ethan, I hate you." He stiffened, then whispered, "Hate me, then. Hate me forever, as long as you stay with me." That night was a tempest of passion. Nina awoke to a heavy arm around her waist. She gently tried to move it, but it tightened. "Awake?" "Ethan, I have to go. I have a call time." "Skip it." "Skip it? Will you support me?" She pushed his arm away and started to get out of bed. "I'll support you, Alex, and our future children." Nina froze, turning back to stare at him. Had she heard him correctly? The Ethan of last night and this morning were 2 different people. He gazed at her intently. "Nina, I know everything." Her heart lurched. "You." He sat up, pulling her into his arms. "Nina, legally, we're still married." She had never seen him again after she abandoned him on their wedding day. "Nina, I've been waiting for you to come back to me." She met his gaze. "What if I hadn't?" "You would have. If you ever remarried, you would have needed me for a divorce. If you had truly moved on." She placed her hand over his mouth. "Don't. It was my fault. My selfishness. I lost you, and I didn't even save my mother." Her voice cracked. "Nina, if my mother hadn't given you her blood, her health wouldn't have deteriorated so badly. She wouldn't have gotten sick. It's all my fault." "Ethan," she clung to him. "Let's be happy. Mom will be at peace, watching over us." He stroked her hair. "Okay." Unspoken words hung between them, but their hearts understood. Nina and Alex moved into Hayes Manor. Ethan wanted a grand wedding, to announce to the world that she was his wife, but Nina wanted only a quiet life for her family. Ethan agreed. One day, the three of them sat on the sofa, watching a press conference for a new movie. The star, a certain actress infamous for her dramatic on-set demands, was the focus of the event. "Mommy, you're so pretty." Nina smiled, popping a segment of peeled orange into Alex's mouth. "Honey, one for me too," Ethan said, opening his mouth expectantly. Nina rolled her eyes. He was acting like a child. Ethan savored the orange, feeling utterly content. "Mr. Hayes," Nina began, "why did you make me entertain those men?" "What do you mean, why?" "Networking, of course." He raised an eyebrow. "Networking like that?" The words lost myself, were on the tip of her tongue, but she swallowed them, seeing Alex watching them with wide eyes. "Did I tell you to dress like that?" Ethan retorted, then said to Alex, "Time for bed." Alex nodded obediently and scampered off. It wasn't her fault. These days, gowns left little to the imagination. She had chosen the most conservative options. She suddenly remembered something. What about Mr. Quinn? Alarm bells rang in Ethan's head. This was dangerous territory. "Honey, it's late. Let's go to bed." Nina grabbed his pajama collar, glaring at him. "If I had, you know." "You wouldn't have." "I called the police," he said quickly. "You? Ethan, did you hate me so much back then that you wanted me to?" "I wanted you to, yes," Ethan said, his voice low, "but only with me." He pulled her into his arms. "Honey, let's sleep." 2 years later, Nina retired from acting. Soon after, she was spotted shopping, her belly rounded with a second child, a small hand holding hers, and Ethan by her side. The end.